Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot. Each week I bring in a different business leader who's doing game-changing things, and this episode is no different. I am so delighted to have Erika Dalya Massaquoi, who is the founder and CEO of the Oula Company, and a fantastic fashion brand. She has an amazing story. Take a listen. Hey, Erika.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Laura.
I'm delighted to have you on the show. I love your dresses, as we've already discussed. First question in the podcast, always the same. Answers are always amazing. I'm sure yours will be no different.
Okay.
So, Erika, what was your first job?
My first job was working at The Limited. I was in the 8th grade going to 9th grade. I had to get special permission from my mom. The Limited was a really cool store in the Omni Mall in Miami, Florida, where I'm from. And I remember at a very young age wanting to earn my own money. So I was like this 15-year-old girl selling these 80s power suits to like working women. It was like so great. And that's back when The Limited was like super cool. We get this music that they came from London. So it'd be like a lot of Robert Palmer playing. But I remember just being this young girl selling these like 80s power suits with these shoulder pads to older women. And boy, could I turn some like suits out. I was the highest seller in the store. And I only worked on like the weekends and Friday evenings.
Of course, because, if you want something done, trust a Black woman.
I remember that. Oh my God, that's such a fond memory. Thank you for asking.
Oh, of course. So, okay. So we go from the top saleswoman at The Limited to where you are now. What's that journey been like?
Well, my journey began, I'd always been an artist. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and my parents, they were sort of like hippie parents. They let me explore a whole bunch of things until I found out what I loved. And I went to a performing arts school in Miami, Florida. But fashion had always been my first love. I grew up watching Style with Ethel Clinch on CNN every weekend. So I knew I wanted to be a woman of arts and letters and culture and design. And so after graduating from high school, New World School of the Arts in Miami, Florida, I attended the University of Chicago, where I majored in history. And at that point, coming out of being a theater major in high school, I really thought that I wanted to be a playwright. And when I got to the University of Chicago, I wanted to study the breadth and depth of history. And I did that. But along the way, I discovered cinema. And I began making experimental films, short video films, and ended up graduating from the University of Chicago with a BA in history and a master's in social science. I was then recruited by Tisch School of the Arts at NYU to enter their PhD cinema studies program. And so I got a PhD in cinema. And I had
How does one get a PhD in cinema? Back up the truck here. How does that happen?
How does that happen? Well, I began curating cinema. So I worked for documentary film groups at the University of Chicago, which is the longest running student film documentary program in history. So I began, one of my first jobs when I was in college, I began as a projectionist, right? So I would project all types of film. I remember my first film I projected was Viva Las Vegas. And that was the first film I projected. People would come and they would see films and, I, loved everything art and culture wise. So I was like, oh, this would be a good part-time job. And that was the first film I projected. And then that just sort of melded into me curating film programs. I never knew that could be a career for me, the ideal of curating programs. So I curated an early African cinema project. I remember curating a blaxploitation project, and I just got more and more deeper into cinema. And when I think back on it, it had always been an important part of my life. I remember staying up late watching a lot of film noir films and musicals with my mom on public television. And so it came very naturally to me. And then I moved into the space of curating film. And, it was a small group back then of people who were doing like Black American cinema, academia work. And I was one of them. And so I ended up writing my dissertation on the history of multicultural media art from 1950 to 2000. And it became a huge show. Yeah, Race and Digital Space. It traveled to the Studio Museum in Harlem. It was also seen at the MIT List, the Visual Arts Center. But before that, I'd also worked as an assistant curator at the Museum of the Moving Image, as well as a curatorial assistant at the Whitney Museum of American Art. So when I was in New York, I was going to school full time and I was working full time, burning the candle at both ends. But that's sort of what you do when you're in New York.
Exactly.
I started grad school in the mid 90s and it was a great time to be a creative in New York. I remember going to work and then I would take my classes in the evenings. I would do all-nighters, writing my, papers, but it was a great lifestyle. I went to all the openings for cinema. I was at all the openings for media. And when I finished up my PhD, I was actually again recruited by Oxygen Media. And this was the early days in Oxygen when it was still, Oprah Winfrey and Carsey Warner Mondabach. And it was like Ms. Magazine. That's the only way that I can describe it on television. This was before the days of girls behaving badly. And it was right before reality television started. So we were all sent out to video boot camp and I would go out with my camera girl and we would basically cover everything in art and designs. I covered the shows at Fashion Week when they were still at the tent. I would do these evergreen projects, going into designers' ateliers and spending like a week with them and creating these amazing like 5 to 7 minute pieces. I would shoot it. I would do a rough cut and then we do a final cut and it would be on television. It was awesome. One of the best jobs I ever had.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. It was great because I would pitch a story and then I would make it come to life, right? And then after the Oxygen gig, I'd also done some radio work for NPR. And then I was recruited to be the assistant dean of art and design at the Fashion Institute of Technology. And by the time I got to FIT, of course, fashion was the signature in the School of Art and Design. But I was working on curriculum and instruction for all the departments in our school. So that included everything from visual presentation, exhibition design to accessories, graphic design, computer animation, photography, fine arts, you name it. So over, I guess that would be like a 20-year span, I'd done all this work. So I had all this history and all this knowledge. And I was in my late 30s at that point. I got married. I had a child. We moved from New York to Seattle. And Seattle really is where I started the Oula Company, because at that point I'd become, I hate to even say it, but it's true, a trailing wife. I was, trailing my husband for his work. And a friend of mine in Seattle said, it's great you have all this wonderful history in art and design. I think you need to maybe consider entrepreneurship. And I had so many friends who were working in the VC sector and the technology sector, and Seattle is such an entrepreneurial town. So I really began the Oula Project as a social, cultural project for many years. I would just do one collection a summer and sell it to all my friends and do it the next year. But my commercial business really began with my partnership in Nordstrom, which started in January of 2021.
Wow.
I know. So that was a mouthful.
That is an incredible story. Funny,
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were in Seattle because I was in Seattle last week. Because that's in person.
Well, I'm in Denver now. We moved in COVID. So I moved once again, right when my first collection for Nordstrom was due, to Denver. So it was important for me, even though I was, following my husband across the country, to still have something for myself.
That was yours, right?
And that was really mine. And that, really use the breadth and depth of my experience. I mean, my career, I've been so privileged, regardless of the area of art and design that I've worked in, to work at that intersection of culture, history, and style, whether it's creating environments in the museum world or working on curriculum, with professors and students, or working as a professor. So, that if we take it all the way back to when I was, a young girl working at the Limited in retail, going through retail, through academia, contemporary art, then as a dean, and now as a fashion designer, I feel in many respects like I've come full circle.
Yeah, this sounds amazing. And it's such a beautiful tapestry of how you melded all those pieces together to get to be where you are. Like it's so wonderful. So I came into contact with the Oula Company back in February when I needed a dress when I was going to be interviewing Aurora James, and my stylist found you at Nordstrom and was like, this is amazing. And the first thing that blew me away was that the material that you use is outstanding. So I'd love for you to share, like, how do you source these materials? How did this all come to be? All that good stuff.
Sure. So for the Oula Company, we use African wax fabric, as well as dead stock fabric for our dresses. And so just to give you a little background, Oula, the name Oula is a derivation of my great grandmother's name, which her name was Lula, and it means will and determination. So I've really created the company as a way to honor the women in my family who made so many sacrifices for me, as well as also to build a legacy for my daughter, Luba, who's 12 years old now. I grew up in an African-American Orthodox Muslim household, and my parents were very Black is beautiful forward. My touch point is really with my mother wearing African wax fabric in the 70s. And I always remember her in like a beautiful caftan, with natural hair and all this jewelry, beautiful perfume. I mean, you could hear her and smell her coming, right? She was one of those fabulous ladies. And so I just really wanted to replicate that. As a working mom, I was like, I need something easy to put on. A beautiful dress that will take me from drop off in the morning to business to date night with my husband to vacation. So that's really how I started it. Now, my husband is from Sierra Leone. And so when we married, I started wearing a lot of Ankara for special events, but I really wanted to get to the place where I could wear it every day. So I literally just started the company. I did not write a business plan, much to the chagrin of my husband, who's a strategic CFO, and his work. I just intuitively knew that it would work. I took all the money that I was earning working as a curator for the Seattle Art Museum, and I put it into Oula, and I've been bootstrapping it myself ever since.
Amazing. Fantastic.
Yeah, so we source all of the wax cloth from West Africa, from India, and from Europe, but everything is made in the USA. And one of the reasons that I do that is because I really believe in art and design as a catalyst for economic development. Having worked in academia, you see so many BFA and MFA students who don't have the opportunity to hone their craft and work in their area of concentration. And Oula gives me an opportunity to give back to those artisans and those practitioners to cut and sew these beautiful dresses.
Amazing. Again, the dresses are fantastic. They're gorgeous. They're sold in Nordstrom. And when I stepped on the stage at our event wearing your dress, there's an audible gasp. Because it's a quite a dramatic brown and red dress. Because for me, I always wear red whenever I'm presenting, and so I wanted something that would have red in it, but would have a different vibe to it. Because I was deliberately wearing only Black designers for that event, and so and because it was also showing that Black-owned businesses make beautiful luxury goods.
Yeah,
and it isn't about like a handout. This is like I would have bought this anything anyway. If I had seen it before. And I think that's the key about a lot of this stuff is that sometimes folks think, well, oh, we're just doing a nice little handout to help these little Black and brown business. Like, no, these things are expensive. Just like how much you would pay for a dress that cost, Same
Yeah,
deal.
they're expensive. And so I've struggled with that because, everything, it's a cost to having everything made in the USA, right? I
Hmm.
work with family-owned textile business that I've built a relationship with over the years. And when you look at what we're doing, it's high quality cotton. I mean, the actual hand of the fabric is about as thick as like a man's Oxford shirt. And sometimes
Hmm.
it's thicker than that. And sometimes we do, cotton blends, but they're very specific. They're block printed or screen printed on both sides, so it's not like you have a beautiful print on one side and it's that ugly white on the other side. This is
Hmm.
dyed through. They're easy to wear, gorgeous pieces. It's the closest thing to couture that you're going to get because everything was cut and sewn by a person and then handcrafted by a person. And what makes Oula, I think, so unique and specific that people know it when they see it is how I select the prints. I lean more towards sort of modish, beautiful conversational print. So I love a floral that's abstracted. I will also choose prints that replicate sound waves. I had another one that replicated like a video game. There's a lot of depth in what I choose. And a lot of that comes from me having over the past 30 years of my career. I've seen a lot of art. I've seen a lot of cinema. And so all of that gets woven into what the Oula Company is and has become. So it's a very unique look and it's a direct reflection of my lived experience and also of my taste.
You have beautiful taste. It's
Oh
fantastic.
yeah, and thank you so much. And so it's really I just have a secondhand feel for it. I do work with the buyers because we're in Nordstrom, but we're also on Shopbop now. So
Awesome.
those two customers are very different customers. So it's been interesting to me to see what colors and what silhouettes resonate, with different generations, in different areas of the country. That's been interesting too, so that I'm able to more fine tune and more carefully curate each collection. And each collection is an amalgam of colors. So sometimes you'll go into a department store and you'll see a brand and, it's the same colorway and
Hmm.
everything kind of looks the same because they're on trend. I want Oula to almost be the direct opposite of that. So you'll see a lot of different prints, a lot of different colors. It's almost like a mini pop-up or art installation, a riot of color on its own. So it always stands out on the floor in terms of me comparing it to like, peer brands on the floor. It makes its own statement.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that's the key about it. I think that's the key about all of this stuff is it makes an incredible statement. And that's interesting. Thinking about like how you started to where you are now. What do
mhm.
you think you tell 18-year-old Erica?
I think I really wish, and I share this with all of the younger kids that I mentor, that I really wish I maybe had been exposed to successful entrepreneurship earlier in my career. It's interesting. My father, he wanted to be an entrepreneur in the worst way, right? He understood that economic freedom was the way. And he started two businesses that didn't go very well for us as a family. He worked the night shift as a sky cap for Eastern Airlines, but he had multiple side hustles,
Right.
that I felt kept us in the poorhouse, like through the eyes of a child. I mean, for
Hmm.
a while, we owned a Carvel ice cream, and then we owned a convenience store, Family Gifts and Housewares. But it never worked out for him. And now that I'm on the other side of being a successful entrepreneur, I see now that had he been exposed to financial opportunities as well as mentorship himself, things could have gone another way. But at that time, we were financially insecure. And as a child, that made me feel anxious all the time that made a lasting impression on me. So the last thing I wanted to be was an entrepreneur.
Right.
I became extremely risk averse.
Right.
And I just wanted, yeah, and it happens. And I just wanted a life of letters and to be a Renaissance woman and to own a house and not have to worry about the lights or the phone being turned off. That was my lived experience as a child. But I realize now that had it worked out differently, I probably would have pursued entrepreneurship much earlier because most creatives are risk averse. We're risk takers. And I think that's why there's been so much diversity in my own career. I wasn't afraid to switch careers, and I was always curious about what would be next. And I just wanted to grow, as a creative. And it's been really easy for me to become an entrepreneur. Everything is secondhand to me. It hasn't been super hard at all. And people find, the hours are long. Everything's on my shoulders. There's that pressure. I feel overwhelmed 95% of the time, but I can't say the work is super hard.
Yeah, it's a whole different universe. I think, it's the thing about entrepreneurship is that, the grass is not greener, it's just grass. You still have to tend to it and you'll find your way. And whenever you come into it is when I firmly believe it's the when you're supposed to fall into it. And just, come from the place of abundance where it's they're in your heart, in your mind, you're at that moment where it makes the best sense for you to do this. I think that's a key about a lot of what we have to go through as entrepreneurs because it ain't easy at all.
It's
Speaking
not
of which,
easy at all, but I realized too that, and having come to entrepreneurship late in my career, I just turned 51 in February. I'm able to advocate for myself in a manner in which I may not have been able to do when I was in my early 20s or my mid 20s. And I realized that, the decisions that I make, particularly working as a supplier, for major department stores, it really sets the stage for those designers who come after me. And I feel like the work has become bigger than me, quite honestly. I do it for the culture, but I also do it for those creatives who are coming up behind me.
And so you can see that, if you can see it, you can always be it.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's as you said, it takes up 95% of the time, so it can be very taxing. So, Erika, what do you do for your self-care?
What I do for my self-care, I do a lot of yoga. I do yoga. I've been a yogi for about 20 years now.
Oh, awesome.
But I'm like one of those serious yogis. So I'm in
headstands and
I'm in
the whole nine.
Yeah, I'm in the 100-degree room doing yoga. In fact, I'm taking yoga teacher training this summer, in all my free time, right? But I really want to deepen my practice because I suffer from anxiety and panic disorder. And I feel like yoga has become healthcare for me, not just self-care. I must do it. I hold the majority of my stress in my body. I'm like a sponge and an empath. So the people I love, if they're going through it, I'm going through it too. And the only way to reset it and to have any type of balance in my life is to make my way to the mat. And that's what I do. And it's really worked out for me. It's been the gift that keeps on giving. And, I have a family to take care of. I have a 12-year-old daughter who's a budding equestrian. So I'm a barn mom. I'm always at the barn when I'm not at doing Oula. And so, I have to be there for her because my most important job is to launch her, right? So I think also having a family forces me to have a certain amount of balance in my life. Saturday is really, I feel like my only day where I don't have stress. I get freakouts on Fridays and I have the Sunday scaries, but Saturday I don't do any work. My husband takes my daughter to the barn. I take my morning bath. I try not to do anything, not even go out of the house if I don't have to. I go to yoga.
Saturday.
That's about it. Yeah, that's my Saturday. And
I'm a firm believer in having a day that's your day. And I call mine Laura days. I usually do it the third Sunday of every month. And I'm just like, that's my day. Leave me alone.
Because, I'm cramming so much into the week, into the hours that I do have, right? Like every day for me almost feels like finals week in grad school. Like I'm squeezing. And, by the time Friday night comes, I really don't have any more to give. But I think that's going to change. I've finally figured out a way to have more balance with Oula and to fire myself from a lot of these jobs that I've been doing.
Exactly.
Really important. That's really what it is. It's sort of like letting go of pieces of it, but it takes a while to become even comfortable with that idea.
Oh, yes.
Because unlike most, unlike most things in art and design, it is very intimate, creating garments that are living on someone's body. So there's a nature to it where you have to be involved. And I think sometimes I think people sense that I'm like hands-on and involved that way, but I can create more space around that, because as I'm getting older, I just don't have the appetite to be burning both candles at both ends.
And it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. And I had to get to a place where I gave myself permission to not always feel like being burnt out was my reality. It doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't. And it takes time. As an entrepreneur, it's really hard. And, like letting go of anything is like, well, no, it's like letting go of a child. It's like, no. Mm-hmm. But then you realize that like the more that you let go, the more that you can free up brain space in you to do the things that actually you want to do to help the business grow. But it is an ongoing balance and it never ends. Like it only ends when you're no longer an entrepreneur. And even then, whatever you do next, you'll still have those like, well, what do I hold on to? What's versus what I need to do? Like, I don't think it ever ends whenever you work. Because even now that technically not an entrepreneur anymore, mm-hmm. I still feel like there's so much that I want to hold on to. Like, well, actually, okay, then other folks will have to do that piece of it. So it's always going to be part of you because that's just the nature of being an entrepreneur. Is that like you want to make sure things look great, they're done your way, and all those pieces that go together. But it's hard, and you have to try and finding that balance is the toughest part about it.
It's so tough. I mean, even with me getting to a place, and comes with the maturity of not even having the appetite to work that hard, I still do it because it's like a muscle.
Yeah, you have to keep working at it. It's absolutely like a muscle.
It's crazy. And so that's what I tell most are like, have balance in your life. Please, it's really, really important. And I have to stay healthy for my daughter and my family.
Yeah, it's imperative.
It's like, and I'm doing creative work, so I need to create more space for just quietness where I'm doing nothing so that I can be creative.
It's a key thing.
Yeah. I mean, I need that. I need those Saturdays to like clear my mind, to like clean the slate. And I mean, I wish I want to get to a place where I'm not even working on Fridays, to be honest.
You'll get there. Look, once you start putting out into the universe, you'll get there. It'll, in whatever shape or form it looks like, if that's what you want, you'll find a way that makes it work, that works the best for you. So I'm a full believer that you're going to make this happen. Considering how incredibly brilliant you already are, I have zero doubt that you will figure this out.
Thank you, Laura. And it's even with the success, you need to hear that. I've all my friends who are like successful entrepreneurs. You always need to hear that. You know what? You're doing well.
You're doing the damn thing. You're doing the damn thing. You're selling in Nordstrom. Yeah, exactly. You're selling in Nordstrom.
We are so hard on ourselves. I'm so hard on myself. It's stupid.
It's hard.
I have conversations with myself, like Erika.
Girl, please. You got this. You got this. So last question for you. Yeah. Do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
Yeah. So my give or ask of the audience is like, get yourself an Oula. I want to do a better job this year of being a brand ambassador for my own brand, making myself the face of the brand.
Fantastic.
Doing more storytelling about it. It's interesting to me. Oula has found its customer base at Nordstrom, but it's not because I've been out there pushing, because I've been focused on getting the scale and creating a beautiful product. But now it's really about people going into the store, experiencing the dresses and passing the word along. So we're going to be relaunching on Juneteenth our website, our direct to customer. And I'm very excited about that. And I'm building that slowly because it needs to be about my full story of Oula and me having more of a direct connection to the customer. And so I want to create space for that as well. People love to hear the story, and the story is always in the process of becoming, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the great thing of it. They're like, there's so many pieces to it. And so, I just want people to go out and actually experience it if they can in person. We're in about 12 Nordstrom stores across the country. And we're also on Shopbop. But I think that once people get into the dress and make it their own, it becomes a whole, as you've experienced, Laura, like a whole event and a whole experience for them.
it brings the drama. And it brings a moment. And I think, especially as Black women, it's really important that we show up and show out. And your dresses show up and show out so beautifully. I mean, the amount of compliments and people are like, where'd you buy this? And I was like, here you go. So I am a huge fan, and I will keep wearing your stuff. You'll see me in other pictures, I'm sure, on my Instagram wearing your fabulous ensembles because they're beautiful. And I am so glad we got a chance to talk because, like I said, I love spotlighting Black women entrepreneurs who are doing the damn thing, especially when like this is a new career. And they've been able to make it happen. You know why? If you want something done, ask a Black woman. Like, done and dusted.
Done. I know. Done and done. It's so true. We know how to get it done.
We know how to get it done. Yeah. So we're going to put all the details in the show notes for folks to find out where they can currently buy you. So Nordstrom and Shopbop, and then coming in Juneteenth on your own website, and share all your socials as well. Erika, it's been such a delight to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome.
Okay.
And that is our show.
Yeah. Thank you.